Good evening. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. I hope you all in the United States had a happy Thanksgiving. And in all other countries, that was yesterday, have a wonderful Thanksgiving every day. Unfortunately, in England, they passed a first ever or progressed it along a bill for assisted dying, they call it. In the United States, it's been called the assisted suicide. And some states in the United States have passed it, like Oregon. And it's allowing other people to actually kill someone when they don't want to live anymore. And yes, they go through a process, but of seeing a psychologist and different hoops they have to jump through, in essence, to get permission then to have a doctor or some type of practitioner give them a lethal dose of medicine to die. And I recall, I think it's been maybe 10 years ago, a young woman in Oregon got it through, so she was able to be killed. And my personal thought on it sounds rather harsh, is we don't need a law for that. I think people, if they really, really want to die, but they don't have the courage to do it themselves. Then they want other people to do it for them so that it makes them feel like, well, this is okay. If we have other people agreeing or a law that says it's okay, then, if I pass through all the levels of saying I can't take it anymore, can't handle the pain, or psychologically I can't and I'll never be better, and get some psychologist to sign off on that, or some doctor to sign off that you'll never get better. Like me, I have all this pain, but people are far worse than me suffer it out because we understand the usefulness of our lives and of our prayers and of our suffering, and strive to be an example of suffering as well as we possibly can, and to use our suffering, victim souls, to use our suffering as prayer, pain prayer, I call it, pain praying. And there's all kinds of pain and suffering, but I know it would be very difficult for someone who had something that they were totally like bedridden, unable to move, and your family and others, always keeping you alive, say even on a ventilator, and it was going to go on for years, I guess, or something. It would be hard to see it worth putting all these, having all these people having to keep you alive and take care of you, and feeding tubes and all. But if the other people don't mind, and it's a lack of understanding suffering and this connectedness between suffering and love and suffering. And it's a spiritually wrong thing to not only kill ourselves, but I think it's even worse to implicate others and to have them do it for us, so that we feel like, well, it's okay. You have company and approval to die. It makes you feel like it's approved to die. And that's what a law will do. So let's pray that this law in England does not proceed. As we all know, if people really don't want to live, they can end their lives themselves, unfortunately. But it doesn't need to implicate other people to do it for them. So, or to make a law that helps justify it. Then people think it's justified, it's justice, then it's legal. So that I'm sorry. And I fell asleep last night. I was exhausted, and I was going to put this prayer need out for England. I got it late last night from one of our viewers, so I'm sorry I did not get that out. And then by this morning it was, too late when I woke up, because we're, I think, 7 hours or 8 hour time difference or something. But I prayed, but we'll just see if it progresses further. But it said it was passed. The bill was, I think there's another step. It's a bill now. I don't think it's a law yet. I have an update on my friend Mary, and it wasn't good news at all, but I'm not discounting a major miracle for her yet. Because, if anybody would have a major miracle like that, I would think it could be her. But her son wrote just yesterday, because I had texted to her a couple of days prior and didn't hear back. So I was becoming concerned and wrote to him and asked, how is she doing? So he said this was yesterday, Thursday. Mom has lung cancer spread to multiple other organs now, including brain and cervical spine. She came to the ER on Monday for intractable pain and nausea, and has been admitted since that time. Her pain and nausea are much better now with medication, and she is getting an ERCP at some point yesterday, because her bile duct is being compressed by the tumor on her pancreas, and they are hoping to stent it open to help relieve some of the congestion in her liver. And then he added later, she was able to get the stent, but is very debilitated and weak. I'm afraid she won't last much longer. So I spent a lot of time yesterday texting to her son, the youngest of 8 children. He's a physician assistant to a cardiologist in a large city, and near where she lives, and has a large family himself and siblings. I think people have been coming and going to see their mother and staying at their home. So he needs prayers, and his wife does. They have 6 young children themselves, and it's just been a lot of other people in and trying to handle it all. And Thomas, I didn't realize he's been working all this time also, and is feeling very, very, everything's out of sorts, plus the shock of how ill his mother is. All of a sudden, this has really progressed in the last 10 days. It was just 10 days ago today that I found out. She had just found out, I think it was the morning before, be a week ago, from week before Thanksgiving, she found out that she had this cancer in her lung and pancreas and liver. And it was Monday that she had an appointment. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. But still, it really progressed, because a week ago this coming Monday, or this past Monday, she was told that it had started in her lung. She'd had a liver biopsy and had an appointment after that. It started in her lungs, and it was going to be 2 to 4 weeks before she could have targeted chemotherapy. And now I don't know what they're going to do. They were backlogged, I guess, between Thanksgiving and just lots of people. At the time, I myself wondered if they knew, if the oncologist knew that it was that bad, that because somebody, and probably someone younger, they would have rushed them in, gotten them in very soon for treatment. But I just thought, maybe this was worse than what she'd been told, perhaps. Or maybe I wasn't being told. But her son, though, they didn't realize it had spread so much, though, even since they saw the oncologist and had the first tests 2 weeks ago. Last Monday when she was admitted to the hospital, it would have been 10 days. It had really progressed. However, I inquired today, how is she? And I was asked, is she conscious even? And reminded him, even if she's not conscious, she'll be very aware, go ahead and talk and all that. I said, I'm sure you know this. I'm sure he knows that, being a nurse or physician assistant. But he wrote back and said that she had been released and is home, resting, exhausted, very fatigued and weak, but resting, and able to be at home. And I'm sure maybe her granddaughter, she has a couple of granddaughters who are adult, on their own. One's married and the other one's not married, divorced, has a couple of children. So I'm sure they're checking in on her, and other people I'm sure are. So I consider that a miracle right there, that she got out of the hospital. And he said, oh no, she's fully conscious but just extremely weak and very, very sick. But the nausea and the pain are under control. So thank you for your prayers for her and the family. And please pray extra. It's Thomas is the youngest son who has all this to do. He's the one living in the area near her. So he has to get all this information out to people, to his siblings and her siblings, her 13 living siblings. So it's a lot on him. I think he's maybe 38 years old at most. Maybe 37, 38. And he has a lot of his own responsibility, plus his own work to do. So, and then let's see. Father Vincent called yesterday and has an update. We need prayers for his sister, who is a religious sister. And I wrote down, she is a religious sister, Sister Vero, Vero, the Passionist Sisters of St. Paul of the Cross. That's her religious order. And she's in Nigeria. And she has similar to pancreatitis. It's not cancerous, but she needs a medication. And she needs it urgently. And a nun from the United States is trying to get it to her. But it's difficult to send medicine. So we need prayers that medicine will get from the United States to Sister Vero in Nigeria fast. She needs it immediately. She becomes terribly ill. You already prayed. She already has had a miracle because she had been very, very sick. She had a collapsed lung and whatever was going on in her abdomen, very, very sick. This has been maybe 4 months ago. And everyone, I asked you all to pray, and whoever was watching videos then was praying. And they got her to Lagos, which is beside Nigeria, so she could get into a hospital. And when they got her into the hospital, they found that there was nothing wrong. Her lung was better. Everything had gotten better. But when she got back to Nigeria, she still had abdominal something, but nothing like it was. And her lung was perfectly fine. So it was miraculous. It just all went away. And but they did find that she has this condition of her pancreas needs a certain medication, or it gets like a pancreatic attack. And it's called something. I forget the name. But it just requires this medication, and they can't get it in Nigeria. And also, it's very, very expensive. If you could get it there, you would have to pay, because it's a corrupt country, unfortunately, as many of us are aware. Very corrupt government. And so please pray that this sister in the United States who's trying to get this medicine sent to her can get it through. Needs to get there. Or she'll just, get sick, more sick again. A lot of pain. It's very painful. And I think makes it very difficult to eat and everything. So Sister Vero needs that medicine. Thank you for your prayers for all these situations. And I want to, and thank you for your prayers for me. I've really been appreciated. I want to share a prayer of Saint Charles de Foucald, a hermit. And it was one, I found it written. This is from his own journal. He wrote journals. He was a hermit. He had been a playboy, very wealthy, and fell away from church and religion. His grandfather reared him. He and his sister were orphans. So his wealthy grandfather, reared them in France back in the late 1800s. And Charles was a soldier, excellent soldier, but he became a playboy and drinking and gambling and all. Really upset his grandfather. Left the church. His grandfather was very devout. And so he, though, had a major conversion, Charles did. And ended up becoming a Carmelite priest. I think it was Carmelite. And went to Bethlehem, was a priest in Bethlehem, and from there had a call to become a hermit. He first started out being just a caretaker in Bethlehem for some sisters, a religious convent, and they convinced him that he had a vocation to the priesthood. So he became a priest, but he took the lowliest job he could, helping these sisters as a caretaker of the convent, because his conversion was very, very thorough and deep and humbled him greatly. He was doing penance for his licentious life he had lived. And so he was still a young man then, fairly young. And so he became a priest. And of course, he had reconciled with his grandfather, and he had his sister, younger sister, who he wrote to faithfully. And she was married, I think had 2 children or something, and was in France. So he became a priest. Then he became a hermit. And he went to the Sahara, the area of the Sahara Desert, Algiers, in northeast Africa. And he had this idea of being a hermit there and just living among Muslims, but being a Christian, but not proselytizing or anything. Would have been killed had he, that wasn't, it wasn't acceptable. And that was in the early 1900s. Maybe around 1912 or 1908, he went there. And I think probably 1908 was in that range. And he built a little hermitage, a hut, um, using mud bricks and different things of that area. And he had been a soldier there, so he was familiar with the area, and he went back to that area. And he just lived on the outskirts of a village. He didn't know the language, but he learned it, slowly learned it. And there was a young boy who began helping him. He paid someone to help him. And the villagers came to realize that he wasn't there to try to convert them or anything, that he was just there and was a nice person and respectful of them, wasn't trying to take them away from their religion, was just living among them or on the outskirts, and very prayerful. And so he had this young boy help him with the building and lifting things. It took him a couple of years to get permission from the Vatican to celebrate Mass, but he needed an altar server. Back then, that was a condition. You had to get permission to have Mass by yourself if you were a priest, but needed to have a altar server, someone to assist, a sacristan. So he trained this young boy to assist him in celebrating the Mass by himself. From time to time, people who knew him, some soldiers or things, would pass through and stop and say hello, and old time's sake. And he had lots of letters back and forth with his sister and his grandfather and other people. And he kept journals in notebooks of his time as a hermit and his gradual breakthrough with the people in the village, of them trusting him. And he wanted to live as Christ among them, very peacefully, and to show them Christ through his own life without really proselytizing or preaching, just being as Christ. And it was very effective. And he had ideas that he would have others come. So he built more cells. He wanted to start a community. See how people do. But this is another clue to me that God really is not in on for hermits. He wanted Charles to be a hermit, and he kept Charles a hermit. He kept him a hermit. No one ever came. And but Charles's writings are in books. You can get them. His journals of his time there, and of his coming increasingly to communicate with God within, and his thoughts and he had a prayer that he wrote. It's very beautiful. And how I came from it to have it was from a man named Dale Francis. He was a neighbor of mine when I was in high school, neighbor of my parents, high school and through college, and later on when I moved back to my hometown. Dale and Margaret, his second wife, his first wife had passed away. His first wife was a Catholic. Dale was a Methodist minister, which is an irony. We were Methodists. But he had converted to Catholicism, and I think, he converted to Catholicism. He had a daughter and a son. The son was handicapped, and so severely so, was in an institution, more hospitalized type. And he had the one daughter, and then after his wife passed from cancer, he wrote a book about his conversion. Dale Francis. He was a great writer, and he also had a radio station, his own channel, his own show on a radio station, in the Midwest, I think, or southeast. very talented man, very articulate, and a beautiful soul. And he remarried. They had another daughter. And those were the daughters that I knew. And his one daughter was my age, but she went to the Catholic high school. I went to the public school. And then Dale also worked for a national publishing company, Catholic publishing company. Wrote a column in their weekly newspaper, and my parents became close friends. Really loved Dale and his wife Margaret. And then when I came back to my hometown with my children, I kept up with them, went to see them and things. I wasn't Catholic yet, but by then God had been working on me a good 5 years. And but Dale died. He had heart problems, and he became ill and died of heart failure. After I'd been back in my hometown about 3 years. And his daughter was my age, and I'd talked with him on the phone a few times. And evidently Dale knew or sensed something in me. And he wanted me to have his rosary, and he wanted me to have this poem that was given to him by a longtime monk friend who was in, I think it's Collegeville, Minnesota. There's a monastery there. And so this monk had sent that to Dale when he was ill and first went into the hospital. And so Dale had told his daughter, that he wanted her to give me his rosary. And his daughter had left Catholicism. His oldest daughter had. And but she did. She gave me the rosary. She's a very lovely person. And had moved away, but came back, of course, when her father was ill, and gave me this poem that this monk had given Dale, and it was this prayer of abandonment by Charles de Foucald. At that point in time, I think he was a blessed or just a servant of God. I think a servant of God. And let me find it here. So I memorized it, and I'd had it on my refrigerator. I don't have that out. I want to get it out and put it back, but I had memorized it, and would pray it every day. And then when I became Catholic too, it meant a whole lot. Then I read Charles de Foucald's life. And there was a book at the convent on it. That was one of the first hermit books I read before I was even thought I would be a hermit. In fact, I think I read it maybe before I became Catholic even. I'm not sure. No, I think I was Catholic by then. They let me use the library and things, and until my godmother got angry with me because I wasn't going to go along. I did not want to be involved in this dissenting movement. I'm not a dissenter. I don't mind what the church has. Some things I'm learning that there are some things that God inspires and God wills, and other things that more humans have wanted and get through or feel a need for. And God allows, if these people need something, if they're not ready for something else, and it's not over yet, with different things. Some things will fall by the wayside that people in the church have created over the years. So this is the prayer that Charles de Foucald. Well, what happened with Charles is that he was from France, and it was World War I began, and there was fighting in that area, in Algiers, in the Sahara area. And evidently, some of the Algerians fighters thought that Charles du Foucald was a gun runner. You know, that these soldier friends were stockpiling or keeping guns in his commune, his different cells and that he had built, his hermitage. And no, he wasn't, but soldiers would stop from time to time because they knew him from their soldiering days when Charles was a soldier. So in 1916, I think it was maybe December 3rd or December 8th, Charles in the morning was writing in his journal, and he'd had a foreshadowing that would be his last day on earth. And sure enough, by evening, the men came and shot him execution style in his hermitage, and ransacked the place, and of course didn't find any guns. But so that was Charles du Foucald's life. And if you want to read some of his writings, I find them not as poetic as some writers, but very clear, very understandable, very down to earth, and a man's style more that you might. I don't want to seem, making gender this or that, but they just seem more masculine, his writings. Whereas even some men, write, or some in some different time periods, more flowery or more poetic. But this prayer is very poetic, and I don't know, but I found his original one, and it's slightly different. So I think the one that I had memorized, that's more poetic, I think someone has massaged that later on. Found it, took it from his original writing. So I'll read both of them. This is the one that I think someone has restructured a little to make it more poetic sounding. Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart, for I love you, Lord, and so need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are my Father. I just loved that prayer. And it was so appropriate that this priest monk had sent it to Dale before, a week or so before he died. The prayer of abandonment for Dale to abandon himself. So this is let me get my glasses there. This is the one that is from his writings. And I had never seen this one before until just like this past week. So, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And he had put where that came from, Luke 23:46. This is the last prayer of our Master, our beloved. May it be ours, and not only ours at our last moments, but at all times. My Father, I commend myself to you. I give myself to you. I leave myself in your hands. My Father, do with me as you wish. Whatever you do with me, I thank you. I accept everything. I am ready for anything. I thank you always. So long as your will is done in me and in all creatures, I have no other wish, my God. I put my soul into your hands, giving it to you, my God, with all my heart's love, which makes me crave to abandon myself to you without reserve, with utter confidence. For are you not my Father? So you can see the difference. And this is how Charles writes in his journals, conversational with God from his heart. And this is just, I was stunned because I had memorized and prayed that other prayer for years. I think after my head injury, I have memory issues. So I remember parts of it, and when I was on the island, I didn't even get my things unpacked for 5.5 years, well, 6 years by the time I packed them and got elsewhere, 6.5 years before I even got in here and could start unpacking, and then I was gutting. So I didn't have that little piece of paper that was given to me, that was given to Dale. And so when I saw this the other day from his writings, I wondered, what on earth? And then I realized somebody has meddled with his writings and gussied it up to make it more, and the other is more dramatic, more poetic, but it's online as the Prayer of Abandonment by Charles de Foucald. Well, this is what he wrote, and I rather prefer. I want to memorize, or I'll type it up, or I don't even have a printer. I'll write it out and stick it on my refrigerator here. I always kept it on my refrigerator. I want to read this. I want to read what Charles wrote, what came from his heart, not what someone else changed to make it seem more fancy. Now I'm wondering if even Teresa of Avila's I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a poem, or even a song, or a prayer or a poem. I'll find it. It's also it's famous, and it's, let nothing let nothing offend thee, let nothing disturb thee, all things are passing. It goes on like that. It's also very good, but I wonder if hers was written out differently and someone changed it. But Teresa was more of a writer of a more wordy and more mystical writing, not as conversational. Charles was a very spiritual person, and obviously loved God, and he got down to the basics of. This was written in 1896, and it was Meditations on the Gospel Concerning the Principal Virtues, 1896, when he wrote this. And but it reminds me, because I've mentioned it before, how we human beings like to meddle, and we like to create and change things around, make things what we think are better. But when I'm considering a human being and what they wrote and what was their writing, I prefer that, especially someone who gave his life, who was martyred, in essence, or they don't call him a martyr. It was a murder. He was murdered. And it was a political kind of a, misunderstanding. They were convinced that he was, since he was French, that he was in on it and part of the enemy, when he wasn't at all. He was trying to be Christ in the desert. And he had been there, I think, at least 8 years, maybe longer, So I'll drag out the books I have on in. Some I've read, a couple I haven't. But I knew that prayer of abandonment was different style. But I thought, well, maybe the Holy Spirit wrote it. He was inspired, or had it more poetic the way it came out when he wrote that. Because his other writings are very lovely. They're real. I like the real. I like Charles as he is, and I like this prayer. This is what he considers his prayer of abandonment. But someone else took these words and rearranged them into a very beautiful poem or prayer, more lyrical. I think you could tell even when I read it. The other one had a cadence to it and all. And there's nothing wrong with that. They maybe improved it as a poem or a prayer as far as what literarily, in a literary sense. But I think celebrate the person and the way he wrote it. He wouldn't care. He wouldn't have probably on earth. He would have thought, yes, that sounds better. Thank you. But I just think I feel closer to Charles with this prayer, with what he wrote. So, and there's more in it. It's more human. He thanks God several times in it. I thank you always. I put my soul into your hands, giving it to you, my God, with all my heart's love, which makes me crave to abandon myself to you without reserve, with utter confidence, and even ending it in a question, for are you not my Father? In the other one, it ended, for you are my Father. And then I didn't realize that this is the last prayer of our Master, our beloved. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. And it is. Jesus said that on the cross. But I didn't realize, he cited the citation. May it be ours. May it be our last prayer. And not only ours at our last moments, but at all times. My Father, I commend myself to you. I give myself to you. I leave myself in your hands. My Father, do with me as you wish. Whatever you do with me, I thank you. I accept everything. In the poem, it says, I accept all. I accept everything. Same difference, but I am ready for anything. I thank you always. I like Charles's version because it's his way. So I don't know. I'm just quirky like that. But when it comes to a holy person, and I just, they ascribe this, they give him credit, but and it's okay. I mean, it is short, it's beautiful, and it looks good on plaques. I've seen it. It's become very famous, and probably this wouldn't have. I have to say, it probably wouldn't have. Because we like rhythm, we like cadence, we like poetry, and anyway, I just found it interesting. I had never known that. It would have been 32 years ago that I was given that prayer, or 31 years ago when Dale passed. But there's another wonderful person. I'm celebrating all the wonderful, because I thought, I'm going to conquer the triggering. And this took me back to something, but it was wonderful. And I was tested with Dale's rosary. My spiritual father said he wanted it. And he knew, and I could tell he was testing me if I would part with that treasure. And I did. And But I have rosaries. I think Dale gave it to me. I think he knew I was going to become Catholic. Within him, he must have known. Um, but he would have loved it for Father Fahey, said his name, Father Fahey, to have it. So, fellow Irishman. Dale was Irish, so, but not directly, no accent like my spiritual dog. So, God bless His real presence in us, and thank you for all the prayers. Please keep praying for Mary, whatever God wills. If it would be quite a miracle, a major miracle, if she were cured of all this cancer throughout her body. And how quickly it has progressed, very rapidly. It's moved into other organs. He said several other organs, in addition to her brain and her cervical spine, her neck area. So, but Sister Vero needs the medicine, and we be praising God for Brian and keep praying for Brian to get a job, a position, a new career that will work well with him. He's had many surgeries after the electrocution, a lot of burn-related surgeries, and so we pray that God leads him to just the right career, vocation, and a good income for him. He has 4 children and a wife, and he's been out of work for months. Since this terrible electrocution, that miraculously he survived. Thanks be to God, prayers do work. They do work. God bless you all.